All right, we are going to take notes on two-step equations. And two-step equations are, of course, things that are having two things happen to the variable, and then we undo each of those. Let's review one-step equations first. And there are four different types. There is where you add something to the variable, where you subtract something from the variable, where you multiply, and where you divide. Okay, and so in each of these is a different operation. You're adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So to undo, on the side of the variable, I'm going to draw a line here. You want the only thing on this side of the equation to be the variable. So you're trying to get rid of the the plus 4. So we need to get rid of that plus 4. So to undo adding, you subtract. But you do it to both sides of the equation. So positive 4 and negative 4 cancel each other out, and then you're left with x equals 10 minus 4 is 6. So the answer here is 6. I should have left a little bit more space, but this one, x is being subtracted by 3. So to undo that, you're going to add 3 to both sides. These 3's cancel out, and you're left with x equals 7. On this side, x is being multiplied by 2. So to undo that, you're going to divide by 2, but you do it to both sides. I'm going to draw my line. So these 2's cancel out, and then you're left with x equals 6. When x is being divided by 4, you're going to multiply by 4 because that's the opposite. The opposite of division is multiplication. So these 4's will cancel, and then you'll get x is 80. So take a minute and just try to remind yourself how to do one-step equations before we go to two-step equations. If you have any questions on one-step equations, or you need more practice on one-step before you move to two-step, raise your hand and I'll give you some practice problems with one-step equations. Otherwise, we're going to move on to two-step. Two-step equations look like this. Let's say it's 4x minus 9 equals 11. Notice that there's more than just one thing happening to the variable. In fact, there's two things happening to the variable. And I always write those down. So what is happening to x? Well, right now, 9 is being subtracted. So we're going to subtract 9 here. That's what's happening. And then the other thing that's happening is that it's being multiplied by 4. 4x is 4 times x. It's almost like there's a little dot in between there. So 4 times x. So it's being multiplied by 4. So what we're going to do to get rid of the minus 9, we're going to add 9 to both sides. And to get rid of the multiply by 4, we're going to divide by 4 on both sides, because that will undo each other. And this will undo each other because they're inverse operations. The opposite of subtraction is addition. The opposite of multiplication is division. As long as you know what the inverse operation is, and you can read the equation and see what's happening, you should not have any troubles with equations. All right, the last thing that we need to know is that we are doing this in the reverse order of operations. When you're in 6th grade, you learn order of operations, which sometimes they say PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. But when we solve equations, we're going backwards. So I call it SADMEP. And we have to do it in the order that it's listed here. So notice the first thing that we're supposed to take care of is subtraction and addition. So the first thing that we're going to do is add 9 to both sides. Then we're supposed to take care of division and multiplication. So that'll be our second step. Again, notice we're going to do 2 steps, which is why it's called two-step equations. We shouldn't need any more than 2 steps, or any less than 2 steps, exactly 2 steps. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. These 9s will cancel, and we'll get 20. 11 plus 9 is 20. We bring down our 4x, and it says 4x equals 20. Well, we're done with step 1. Notice that the 9 is gone. This is now our new equation. And all we have to do now is divide by 4 on both sides. So these 4's will cancel, and we'll get that x equals 5. Now we're done the second step. And now it looks like what we want. We want x on one side and the numbers on the other. So x is all by itself, so we know we're done. Let's try another one. Let's do negative 3x plus 7 equals 22. Okay, so we're going to say what is happening to the variable. So let's look at it. The first thing you might notice is the 7. So 7 is being added to it. So the opposite of adding 7 will be subtracting 7. And another thing that's happening to it is that the negative 3 is being multiplied by the x. So x is being multiplied by negative 3. So the opposite of multiplying by negative 3 would be dividing by negative 3. So we're going to get rid. The first step that we need to follow, of course we're following SADMEP. Subtraction and addition come first, and then division and multiplication. So the first thing that we're going to do is subtract 7. I'm going to draw my line. And we're going to cancel out these 7's. We get negative 3x equals 22 minus 7 is 15. So we get negative 3x equals 15. We're going to divide by negative 3. And we get that x equals negative 5. Because 15 divided by negative 3 is negative 5. And you can use your calculator to check yourself, especially if you're weak on your integers. Okay, let's write some steps. Now that we have a couple under our belt, let's write some steps. So, step 1, read the problem and determine what is happening to the variable. So read the problem and determine what is happening to the variable. It might not be x, it might be y or g or m or n, it doesn't matter, but we're just going to write x. Step 2, fill in your chart with what is happening to x, and then fill in the right side of chart stating how you will undo it. Okay, so read the problem and determine what is happening to x. Fill in the chart with what is happening, and then fill in the right side of the chart stating how you'll undo it. Step 3, use SADMEP to determine the order in which you will carry out your steps. Use SADMEP to determine the order in which you'll carry out your steps. Step 4, carry out 2 steps and solve for the variable. Let's do another 2 examples. Let's say you have m divided by 2 plus 10 equals 24. Okay, so first step is we have to read the problem. This is m. M is being divided by 2 and it's being added by 10. Those are our 2 steps. So it's being divided by 2 and added by 10. So now I have to read my own conclusion here. So it's divided by 2. What's the opposite of dividing by 2? We're going to multiply by 2. The next thing, it says add 10. What's the opposite of adding 10? Well, it's subtracting 10. So now I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do these 2 steps. The question is, what order am I going to do those 2 steps? So I'm going to write SADMEP at the top. And I'm going to look for any subtraction and then addition. Okay, so is there any subtraction that we need to do? Yes, we're going to subtract 10. So we need to do that first. Okay, there's no addition. Division, no. Multiplication, yes. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is multiply by 2. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract 10 from both sides. So I'm going to draw my line. I subtract 10 from both sides. I got m divided by 2 equals 14. Okay, step 1 complete. We're done with that. Now I still have to do step 2, which is multiply by 2. So multiply by 2. These 2's will cancel. And I'll get that m equals 28. 14 times 2 is 28. And then step 2 is done. And I have my variable on one side and my number on the other. Okay, let's try one more. Let's say you have g divided by -5 minus 11 equals 4. Alright, so let's see. What's happening to g? It's definitely being subtracted by 11. And it's being divided by -5. So it doesn't matter which way I write it. I can write this one first. Divided by -5 and subtracted by 11. So what's the opposite of dividing by -5? Multiplying by -5. What's the opposite of subtracting 11? Adding 11. Now I'm going to write at the top my SADMEP, and I'm looking for subtraction, and I don't have any. I'm looking for addition, and I do have it, so I'm going to do that first. The adding 11 is going to happen first. Then I'm looking for division. I don't have any. Looking for multiplication. I do. So my first step is going to be add 11 to both sides. So I'm going to draw my line, and I'm going to add 11 to both sides. These 11s will cancel. And the first step is complete. Now I'm multiplying by -5. That's what I'm going to do next. Both sides get multiplied by -5. So 15 times -5 is -75. And that's it. We're done the second step. So the next video will be some practice problems from your assignment. Follow along with those, write those down, and then try some by yourself.